Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another live stream and welcome to a huge week for Chelsea. The Champions League is back. We're heading to Bayern Munich Wednesday night. We've got Old Trafford, Man United on Saturday. It's a huge week. There's loads to dive into. Can we bounce back from the disappointment at Brentford? Loads and loads to dive into. Maresca, huge week for him, big week for the players. It's a big week for everyone. It's one as fans that you definitely look forward to. Games coming thick and fast. It's a bit of a bonus that we don't have to sit on that sucker punch at Brentford for a whole week. We've got an opportunity to put it right straight away. So a packed show as always. Loads to dive into, guys. And as you can see, I'd like to be joined by Dan. Mate, how are you doing? You good?
Yeah, good. Good to be here. First appearance of the season on your channel. So good to be back. And look, I'm not going to get too stuck on and worried on that Brentford performance because we've got bigger games to worry about. And I think off the back of an international break, you never know what to expect. So, yeah, good to be here and getting into the discussion about Chelsea.
No, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Big up to everyone that's locked in already, guys. Make sure you're smashing the likes. Make sure you're subscribing if you're new around here. All of that good stuff. Get involved in the chat as well. But just a quick reminder, guys, before I say hello to some of you guys and before we get the show up and running, make sure, people, you check out Jerseys FC Soccer Shop. Link is in the description. Use code BLUEBROTHER for 20% off. Great quality, affordable prices, names, numbers, patches, whatever you want on the back. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you're looking fresh for the upcoming season, guys. Use code BLUEBROTHER, 20% off. Jerseys FC Soccer Shop. Link is in the description. Let's say hello to some of you guys, and then we'll get the show cracking. What are people saying? If Chelsea can't beat United at Old Trafford, we will be pissed about that. Big up. Hope George will not play as a striker against Bayern. Yeah, I hope that as well. Brentford was pure dark arts. Maybe to a slight degree. Yes, big up, brother. I mean, Dan, just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on Brentford. But what have you made of the reaction to that result at Brentford? Because for me, obviously, you know, I'll be honest. People might think this is ridiculous. I would have taken a point before that game. A, because of the record at Brentford, and B, international break, few injury issues, and obviously players coming back late as well. So there was always going to be some rotation. So I would have taken a point before the game. First half was abysmal. At half time, I definitely would have taken a point. But when you concede in that manner, it feels like a loss and you leave feeling massively deflated. But I suppose, what have you made of the reaction? Because I've seen quite a lot of negative reaction to it.
Yeah, I think being so early on in the season and sort of the opportunity to go top, I think it just hurt a little bit more, didn't it? Losing those 2 points right at the death. So it's tough. I think people are over the top a little bit with the reaction being so early on in the season. But I do understand that those points can be huge going forward in a season, and dropping points in that way in any game isn't great. It doesn't feel good. It's never going to be okay. But yeah, like you say, before the game, and especially at half time, you're probably looking at it thinking a draw wouldn't be that bad here. So yeah, appreciate the raid, Sava, sending that in. Legend.
Mate, did he send you over to say about this Rio raid? What a joke, Sava. That's naughty. That's nasty work from you, man. That's nasty work. But big up, brother. Big up.
So look. It's annoying. A draw is a draw against Brentford, who always seem to turn up against us. It's not the first draw we've had there, is it? So look, we'll have better results going forward, I think, within the next month for sure.
No, absolutely, mate. I agree. I mean, one thing I wanted to touch on in regards to that game was the rotation. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, this rotation, it's a league game, it's important. You shouldn't be prioritizing other games or whatever." But when you look at it, okay, whether we like it or not, you simply cannot play your best 11 players every single game with the amount of games that you have coming up. You know, do people honestly think you're going to play the same 11 against Brentford, the same 11 against Bayern, and the same 11 against Man United? It's not happening. Whether you want it to happen or not, it's not happening. Football, the modern day, you have a squad for a reason. You need to use it. You don't want to run players into the ground, getting injured, etc. I had no problem with the rotation in this game. Jarell Hayter over Cucurella made sense. Buonanotte coming in was a little bit of a surprise, but given Palmer was on the bench and whatnot, there's no Esteban in the squad either. He was ill. Didn't really have an issue with that either. Gittens on the left-hand side was always going to start over Garnacho because, you know, he's bedded in more at Chelsea than Garnacho is. Pedro's up front. The only issue I had, right, not with Wesley Fofana starting, but with Fofana starting at right back. I felt that was strange, given James and Gusto both on the bench. I understand Reece played twice, for England. I get it. But not using Gusto and putting Fofana at right back, I thought was a bit of an odd one. But what did you make of the rotation? And does it highlight that actually maybe our squad options and squad depth isn't perhaps as good as a lot of us thought it was?
Yeah, look, I think Maresca's underestimated Brentford before with rotation as well. I think it's one of those games where they're so up for it that you almost have to go with your best 11 if possible. And obviously, due to international break, we probably weren't able to do that. So I think his hand was kind of dealt. But the Fofana one shocks me. I think the right back situation is one that has caused Maresca a lot of issues, if I'm being completely honest with you. I don't think it's one he's got completely right. I think, obviously, Reece James has not played as many minutes as we'd all like to see.
He started one game out of 4.
One game.
Yeah.
I think Gusto, his form under Maresca has been, this season and last season, it's been better, I think, this season, but it's been questionable. I think probably he got a good look at Fofana throughout the international break in individual training. I heard they played a game behind closed doors that Buonanotte also thrived in as well. So he probably thought he'd give him a run out and see how they do. And I think we saw that all 3 of those players that he gave a chance to probably didn't sort of take their opportunity and didn't grab it, didn't make any headlines. And he felt that after, 45 minutes, he had to drag 3 of them. That is a rarity in the Premier League. So as much as he's given them some minutes, they've also not delivered. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that Newcastle game in the League Cup last season, that he gave some of the players a chance. They didn't deliver. And then he was kind of set, right, these guys aren't at the level. I know my players.
Do you know what it is, right? And I look at it, and because I done a review after the game and, saying that maybe the squad depth isn't as good as we think it is. And I think, I don't want people to take this the wrong way, that I think we've signed crap players or whatever. But when you look at the rotations that an Arsenal make or a Liverpool make or a City make, for example, for us, when we're rotating, we're putting players in who have either it's their first start, they've never played, they've never kicked a ball for the club before, they're new to the Premier League or whatever it is. Those are the players that we're putting in. Whereas if you look at Arsenal, they're putting Eze's in, they're putting Madueke's in or whatever. These are guys that have been there and done that in the Premier League to a certain extent. It's more plug and play. Whereas with us, with the way that we've chosen to recruit and the way that we are doing things at the football club, that's what's going to happen. You're putting in players who have barely played for us. And that's going to cause issues. And there are going to be teething problems because these guys are going to take time to get up to speed. They need time to adapt. And so that's where I look at it and I think, right, okay, yes, it's annoying, but this is the route that we've chosen to go down. And we have to accept when we rotate and when we put these players in, they're perhaps going to take a number of appearances and a number of weeks, even months, to get themselves up to speed. And I mean, do you look at that as that kind of is a problem? But I'm not losing my head at game week 4, but just in general, moving forward, do you think that's a bit of an issue?
Yeah, I think the main issue and the reason that sort of comes to the forefront and as a problem is because of how much rotation the team's had over the last couple of seasons under Clearlake. Is there's been so many ins and outs and the team's never been settled that it's different players to rely on as part of the second string squad every season. We, like you said, you mentioned names like Madueke. We would have had Madueke in his third and a half season by this point, and it would have been an experienced player that, look, maybe he wasn't doing enough, but we all know what he's about. The manager knows what he's about. You bring him in. It's not Buonanotte playing his first game for a big side, his first 45 minutes, because he's been at Brighton and then a relegated Leicester. So it's moves like that, isn't it? Gerald Hato, like last season, it was Renato Vega in exactly the same position, and then he got moved on. And it's just, if it was Vega and he'd settled and he'd had a season, he'd be experienced coming into this game against Brentford, and you know what you're getting, and you'd know the type of player. And I think that's the issue, isn't it? A little bit of stability will go a long way. If Hato can sort of cement himself at the club for a few seasons, this time next year when you're rotating and you've got international breaks, I think we'll all feel a lot more confident in the guy coming in. But
isn't that a problem in itself, though, mate? That it's always seems with Chelsea, rather than now, this time next year, next season, this and that. Do you know what I mean? So you look at it and like, by the way, I think Hayter's a great player. I think he's going to be really good for us. But you're spot on when you say these players, they've been signed for now, but they're not ready for now. And that's when you look at the teams that we're looking to close the gap to, they've signed players that are ready for now.
Yeah, I look at
Alexander Isak. I know people can say, Florian Wirtz has not started well, but Isak, Wirtz, look at Frimpong. I know Kirk's not at the best start, but these are guys that are ready to play now. Whereas you look at the squad options that we've bought in, they are not ready to play now. And you put yourselves at a bit of a disadvantage, in my opinion, when you do that, because you're constantly playing catch up. And so I like the squad, and I think a lot of the business done in the summer was good. But was it good enough to close the gap on the teams above us? That's the issue for me.
Yeah, that's what I was literally thinking myself as well. Is I look at teams, obviously Spurs are in the Champions League, but they went and signed players like Xavi Simons. They went and signed, who I think, by the way, is a level above like Buonanotte coming in.
Yeah. For sure.
They went and signed like João Paulinho, and they kind of, what they did was they nudged
Juan
out
Kudos
players
as well.
They signed players that were in their who are good enough to go straight into their starting 11, and nudged the players that have been in their starting 11 to the subs bench. Whereas I think we went out and recruited players that probably wouldn't get into the starting 11 and are on the subs bench and can compete. And I think, is that the right way to do it? I'm not sure. I think if you want a suitable backup option now who's ready, no, it isn't. But if you're happy for that to be something that develops over the next season, then maybe it's the right thing to do, because Hayto's looked like a really good player. I think João Pedro was the type of signing I think that can come in, compete straight away. Maybe we didn't all think he'd be as good as he's already been, but there's an air of Cole Palmer, I think, about the João Pedro signing, to be honest with you. I think he's gone up a level instantly as soon as he signed for Chelsea. And I think that they're the sort of signings you need to make to improve your squad depth instantly, be comfortable in rotation, and be able to still pick up points, or the full 3 points. We've probably signed players that were maybe good enough to get a point against Brentford, who, last season our squad might not have been good enough to even get a point. So I think the squad's improved, but I think, like we were saying, without stability and without a bit of trust and development, I don't think the squad is fully ready to be competing on all fronts right now with as much rotation as it might need to prevent injuries for all the other players.
No, mate, I absolutely agree. There's no doubt the squad's improved. But when you look at the players that we signed this summer, how many of them have made the first team better? And for me, it's one, João Pedro, possibly two with Esteval. But really, you can definitely say João Pedro has made the first team better. And Esteval, I think I'll put in there as well. Right now, I'm surprised at how well he's done so quickly. Obviously, there's going to be weeks, months, games where he is poor and he doesn't have an impact. But I think already he's starting right wing already, in my opinion. So there's two players that we've brought in that have made the first team better. I also look at the attack, right? And we signed 5 players in attack and 4 left. That is a huge overhaul in a really important position of the pitch. I was having this conversation with Matisse, and you go through it, right? And it's Garnacho, first season at Chelsea. It's Buonanotte, first season at Chelsea. It's Jamie Gittens, first season in the Premier League. It's Esteval, first season in the Premier League. It's Liam Delap, first season at Chelsea. And it's João Pedro, first season at Chelsea. That's 6 attacking players there who it's either their first season at Chelsea or it's their first season in the Premier League. Now, when you overhaul a part of the squad that much and 4 attackers come out and 5 come in, that's going to take a lot of time to gel. That's going to take a lot of time for these players to click and adapt to the system and adapt to the football club. Do you think that, I don't want to say we signed too many attackers, but you do take a risk when you sign so many players in one part of the pitch all in one go?
Oh, 100%. I think it's probably, as much as we've progressed, obviously, in the last couple of seasons, I think the astronomical levels of players in and outs and player volatility at the club I think has ultimately been more harmful than good. However, I think with the way Clear Lake have approached the transfers, they've been able to move ones on that they didn't feel were suitable, and they've kind of got to their best squad or their best players at a quicker rate because they've been able to like move players on if they weren't good enough, and we haven't sort of dwelled on them for 4 or 5 years, which I think is good. If you make a mistake, move the person on. It didn't work out. Don't just keep trying and trying and trying, because I think this club has probably been guilty of that in the past. I think there's a few players that we've spent a lot of money on and we've just kept going with them and with them. And really, we should have sort of broken ties and moved on. So, yeah, I just think there's a reason a number of other clubs are sort of looking for stability and not signing as many players and probably getting better results. But then at the same time, these players come in hungry. They want to challenge each other. And I think the one thing that Clear Lake's always done is it's very rare that we've signed, one player who on paper was miles ahead of the rest of the squad. I feel like everyone's come in at pretty equal levels to compete with each other. And the ones that thrive are the ones that are staying, basically. And I think João Pedro, you probably would have said, look, 10 Premier League goals. He's probably similar sort of level, maybe has better potential than Jackson. He's come in, he looks way better. And then you look at someone like Garnacho, Gittens, the playing field is there. They probably class that as level for both of them to compete. Who does the best is the one that we'll keep. They probably compared them to Madueke, players that had similar seasons, if not better, if not a little bit worse, but maybe more room for development in the same amount of time that Madueke was at the club. And they're interesting signings, but I think maybe moving on that many players and bringing in that many, you're going to have that period of time, which is obviously a time to settle, adjustment, development, maturing. As you say, a lot of these players haven't even played in the Premier League or haven't even been at a club of the stature of Chelsea. We all know how long that can take. Cucurella was at Brighton. It took him a season before he was anywhere near the level for the club.
More than a season. It was almost 2 seasons, because really it was only the last sort of 5 or 6 games of that Poch season when he inverted and he suddenly playing well. It took him almost 2 seasons to get going. I'm not saying that's going to be the case for everyone, but I don't know how
long it could be, isn't it?
That's how, and this is it. That's exactly how long it could be. I mean, look, I agree with you. I think this constant players in, players out at high volume is unsettling. It doesn't lend itself to a stable squad and stability on the pitch and building something for years to come. When I know what I would say though is that they haven't yet sold anyone who is an important part of the first team.
Yeah.
All the players that have come in and gone out are players that either weren't good enough or players that wanted to leave. They haven't sold a player yet who is an important part of the first team squad. They could have sold Levi Colwell. There were offers for him. They could have sold Colwell. There'll definitely be offers for Enzo Fernandez at some point. I don't think they'll sell him. Reece James, they could have sold Reece James if they wanted to. So my point here is that you can criticize the ownership for the amount of players in and players out, but ultimately they are yet to sell anyone who is really important to the first team. And I think it's important that gets put out there as well. Because I think when people say, oh, they're just about profit, they're just about money, to a certain extent, yes. But if that was the entire point of it, then they would have sold Colwell for 80, 90 or 100 million or whatever it was. So I think it's important that does get clarified as well.
Yeah, well, they've gone for that high volatility approach, haven't they? And the ones that have stuck and have worked well, they've backed and doubled down actually, and given them new contracts and said, you know what, if you are good enough, you're going to stay and you're going to be rewarded. And then that shows the other players, actually, if I can perform, I know I can be rewarded. And I think it gives them a real sort of negotiation power when it comes to signing new players as well. They can go in a little bit lower on the contract. They can say to players like João Pedro, look, we signed Cole Palmer. He come in on this wage, blah, blah, blah. He excelled immediately. And now look, right, why can't you do the same? And they can come in hungry. If they're money-focused players, they know that their ability and their performances on the pitch will only benefit them financially more, and the evidence is there. And if they're players that have the right attitude and are ultimate professionals, they'll be rewarded financially for that ultimate sort of dedication. I think we see the perfect 2 examples in Cucurella and in Cole Palmer. One hit the ground running straight away. he's the perfect example that you can come in and just hit the ground running and be in the team and cemented and be backed by the club. And you can also, not start, but be committed and trying to do your best. And they will give you opportunities as long as your attitude is correct and your application to the club is what they believe to be okay and acceptable. I think we've seen players come in, not had the right mindset, not be happy with, where they're playing or the amount of games. And they've been moved on swiftly. Like they've been, outed from the team. They've been dealt with. And I think as much as at the beginning, I felt that it was, all negative with this. I think now, as it goes on, I was looking at, there was a situation against Brentford where we lined up for the free kick. And I think there was Cole Palmer, Enzo, Reece. And I was looking at them and I was like, that's not the kid Enzo Fernandez anymore. That's a player now who I view as experienced. You've got Reece James. Tuchel's talking about him being the best right back in England or in Europe. You're starting to see these players actually grow into the stature that we thought they might have. And I think slowly but surely the squad is, the players that are sticking, they are sort of slowly starting to grow into the stature that I think we all expect a Chelsea side to have.
I agree. You look at Cole Palmer, third season at the club now. Look at Enzo Fernandez. Yeah. What's he now? This is his, fourth season in January with it?
Yeah. They're experienced players now, aren't they?
And this is it. And this is where the plan is that you sign these players and then in 3 to 4 seasons, that's your experienced core. And then you add the other players to it. Now, whether this is actually going to work in the long term, I don't know. There's some evidence that it has worked, but there's no evidence in terms of can this approach win us a Premier League title? I don't know, because the reality is that right now I still think we're quite a long way from the Premier League in terms of when you look at the teams we've got to compete with and close the gap to. I wanted to speak on the attack, particularly on the left-hand side. Jamie Gittens has come in. We spent a decent chunk of money on him. It's 4 games. So this is not me saying that Gittens is shit. It's never going to work. It's a total waste of money. However, when I look at him and I watch him play, this is someone to me who looks nowhere near ready to play Premier League football. He looks the odd one out on the pitch. Against Brentford, he looked totally lost, in my opinion. He doesn't look like he's on the same wavelength as everyone else. He seems to be a confidence player, and that confidence doesn't seem to be there. He also, in my opinion, looks more like an impact player from the bench. But then I look at someone like Garnacho, and I think that maybe he also falls into that same category where maybe Gittens and Garnacho, and maybe Garnacho can actually develop more into a starting role than Gittens can potentially. But I look at both those players on the left-hand side. Garnacho is far more ready, and I think he'll actually probably be decent enough for us. But specifically with Gittens, he looks like he's really struggling. And I get it, it's going to take time, but I just haven't seen anything yet to suggest there's really anything there.
Yeah, I've been really disappointed with his end product. I've really sort of struggled seeing how he comes to a decision with his end product and not understood why he sort of either the execution hasn't been there or the decision he's made has not really been good enough. And I do think he's incredibly raw. I think there were question marks around him towards the end of last season at Dortmund. I think he started that season well, got confidence, and then sort of as the confidence sort of weaned off, so did his performance levels. And I think everyone was sort of shocked when he eventually went for the money that he did this summer to Chelsea. But we've overplayed for players with not much experience before because they sort of believe that will be the fee that they would have been worth in 4 or 5 years' time, something like that. So yeah, interesting one. Not sold on Gittens. Don't think he'll be first choice when sort of everyone's fit and available. I almost feel like the season hasn't got going yet. We were chatting before the show with the international break and then a couple of injuries to Palmer, to Esteval. Esteval's a million miles ahead of Jamie Gittens right now. I think Neto, even on the left, is obviously ahead of him. I think Garnacho probably is ahead of him. He's a player that last season got 10 goals in an awful Manchester United side. I'm not as disheartened with the Garnacho signing as a lot of other people have made themselves heard with. But I think there's a talented player there. And I think Garnacho, I've seen more from him in the Premier League in terms of moments and decision and pure ability than I've seen from Gittens at Dortmund and at Chelsea in these opening few games. And I think, like you said, I think I wouldn't be surprised, although he cost a lot of money, that if we're seeing Gittens sort of play a role where he's coming off the bench and he's having an impact and he's being used in Champions League games if the rotation's there, or he's used in a Premier League game if the rotation's there, and he'll develop, because I believe there's a player in there, but I think we've got to go quite some way to get it out of him at the moment, off of what we've seen.
Yeah, no, mate, I do agree. I mean, there's no doubt there's ability there and there's talent there. Have we overpaid for this one? Yeah, we probably have. You know, we have to be honest about that. But it will take him time. But I think you're right, because I look at it, he's third choice on the left wing, because Garnacho's ahead of him and Pedro Neto's ahead of him as well on that left wing, even though Neto's probably more on the right. He can also play left. I'd almost argue I saw more from Tyreek George in that second half against Brentford out wide than I have from Gittens in the few games that we've seen so far this season. And that's a player who, I don't know whether Maresca wanted him at the club or not, but that was a player that was set on leaving the football club and would have left the football club had Fulham been able to get rid of Jack Harrison. Not Jack Harrison, I can't remember who it was now. Harry Wilson, sorry. Had Fulham been able to get rid of Harry Wilson to Leeds, then George would have been playing for Fulham. He was all set to go. He was there for the medical and whatnot. And that fell through. And now you're sort of seeing a player that wasn't wanted by the football club, or a player who wanted to leave, is now getting minutes, sort of regular minutes in the team. It's all a little bit strange. I mean, I want to touch on a centre forward situation before we move on to the Champions League and stuff. I was a massive advocate in the summer, and a lot of back and forth with people in the chat about we need 3 strikers in this squad. And people were saying, oh, no top team has 3 strikers. It's always 2, and then you have someone else who can fill in or whatever. And my main thing was, right, look at the situation. It's not as black and white as 1 spot, 3 players fighting for that spot. Because Joao Pedro, who's one of our options at number 9, also covers at number 10 and could play wide. So realistically, you're looking at it, and your only out-and-out 9 in the squad is Liam Delap as a pure out-and-out 9. Joao Pedro can play as a 9 and can do a good job there, but he is not a natural out-and-out number 9. And so I looked at it, and I was like, right, we're taking a massive gamble here. 4 competitions, loads of games. There's going to be injuries. You're going to want to switch things up. 1 player gets injured in Liam Delap, and we are scrambling. And already twice in the first 4 games of the season, we have seen Tyreek George playing up front. That, I'm sorry, is not cutting it for Chelsea Football Club in terms of quality and in terms of options that you need. I think we can already ascertain that Joao Pedro, whilst he can do a job at 9, is better as a 10. We saw against West Ham playing off Liam Delap. That looks quite good. Obviously, Delap's gone down with an injury. It happens. It's unfortunate. It's part of football. But when in a key area of the pitch, you are 1 injury away from a shambles, essentially, that injury to Delap threw us into panic mode. You know, we're trying to cancel a Jackson loan deal. Then we're holding inquiries about Conrad Harder. And then we're recalling Mark Guiu. And then we're eventually, Jackson actually don't want to come back. So we're going to let that go anyway with an obligation that's not going to be triggered. That's a separate conversation. But I look at it, I'm just like, how are we still, in my view, so short up front where you're 1 injury away from Tyreek George at centre forward?
Yeah, do you know what? I think it's been a recurring factor throughout this squad building process at Chelsea, is that I think striker we've always left incredibly short. And I believe they do that because 1, they either want to guarantee game time to the striker, or 2, they believe that with a 1 striker system, they're not of the same mindset as probably you and me, where you might need 3 rather than 2 strikers in the squad. I would always probably have an extra one, even if it was a youngster that was promising and being developed too. I think they probably found in Mark Guiu a little bit last season, but I think we probably saw that he's not reliable. But is he more reliable than George up front? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Either way, I don't believe that Chelsea should be playing, like you say, 2 of the first 4 fixtures in the Premier League with either, a Mark Guiu or a Tyreek George up front or something like that. It's not good enough. It's almost makeshift with Tyreek George as well. It's a little bit laughable considering we've let Jackson go on loan to Bayern Munich, who have almost publicly come out and not humiliated him, but kind of said he's never going to sign and the obligation is never going to be triggered.
Yeah.
I think that whole scenario around Jackson probably wasn't handled well. I think Jackson didn't take too kindly to potentially being, replaced. But at the same time, I probably expected that this season we'd go into it with Jackson and Delap battling it out for the 9.
Yeah.
The addition of João Pedro kind of throws, a different sort of variable into the mix, but also someone who's incredibly versatile in where he can play. And it kind of was the Nkunku replacement in the squad last season, that if Pedro comes in off the left wing, you're not going to be surprised. If he plays up top in a game that you need him to, fine. Okay, if he comes in off the bench, he's been way better than I expected him to be in these opening games. And I think Chelsea were probably shocked with how good he looked at the Club World Cup, that they felt confidence in moving Jackson on. But to be honest with you, I think even then you probably should have looked at it and gone, right, if we get any injuries, is our depth going to be enough? Because if Cole Palmer gets injured, Pedro becomes a 10, then what happens to our striker depth? It gets shredded in half almost instantly.
There is none. There's no striker.
There isn't one. There isn't one.
Like,
exactly.
You could be in a situation, mate, where you're starting Mark Guiu up front against Bayern Munich, for example.
Yeah.
If Palmer wasn't fit, and what it does do by having Delap unavailable and being short in that number 9 position is that it doesn't allow you to play Pedro in a 10 and shift Cole Palmer out to play right side, but sort of like inside right forward. And you can have Malo Gusto overlapping, like we saw when Esteval played right hand side against West Ham. He tucked in and Gusto overlapped, and that worked quite well, picking up those pockets on inside right position. You can't that takes that away. It takes it away completely from being able to try something different, from being able to rotate that front line, because you play João Pedro in a 10 and you put Palmer to the right as an example. Your 2 options up front then are Tyreek George and Mark Guiu. And I'm just like, guys, how are we possibly in this position once again? Where
I think they've realised it though, Charlie, haven't they, as well? Because they not announce the Omega deal?
They did announce, yeah, it is. But
so I think you're right. I think they've realised it a little bit too late and gone, have we done this again? We've got to do something about it.
Because look at the Omega thing, right? And it was an obvious sign that was going to happen. I don't know loads about him, but he's an interesting profile. He's 6'5". He's rapid. He scored 14 goals in the French league last season. He's already a captain at Strasbourg or whatever. It's an interesting profile to have, and it's something different to Pedro, and it's something different to Liam Delap. However, I would have thought you knew pretty much for the majority of the summer that you didn't want Nicholas Jackson and you were going to sell Nicholas Jackson.
Do you think they didn't want Jackson, or do you think Jackson acted in a way that was just like unrepairable between the two parties?
I think whether they said it directly, whether they wanted him or not, if you're Nicholas Jackson and you're looking at Liam Delap and João Pedro coming through the door, that's surely an indirect of the club saying, we don't really want you anymore, or you're not going to play as much as you want to play. Now,
it's a question of faith and trust. I get that. But I also think that if Jackson believes in himself as much as he does, why... he's gone to Bayern Munich to play second fiddle to Harry Kane. He surely doesn't believe that, they've signed Luis Diaz. He's probably not going to go and be their guaranteed left winger. What happened to Nicholas Jackson? There was a couple of red cards, and I think he didn't act well. And I think the club were a little bit disappointed, probably felt that he was throwing his toys out of the pram due to probably rumours that he'd heard or his agent had heard. And, sort of that didn't seem great. But I can't understand. Nicholas Jackson, I think, personally, would have been better off keeping a professional attitude, staying at Chelsea, seeing how this season goes, rather than going to be backup for Harry Kane, who, let's be honest, isn't going to be rotated out of that squad, is going to play 40-plus games if fit and available for Bayern Munich. Jackson ultimately probably would have been in a better position at Chelsea and then assess his options at the end of a season.
I agree. And if we've kept him, and this is all ifs and buts right now, and it's obviously irrelevant because he's gone, but you could have even made an argument for scrap signing Gittens, Garnacho on the left, and Jackson as an alternative option on that left-hand side as well. And you've got Pedro Neto, and you've got João Pedro who could play there, and you've got then 3 players that can also play as a number 9. It was a strange one. Clearly, Jackson's got a big ego, as a lot of footballers do. And if he feels, but then your point is correct in the terms of you could understand if he'd gone somewhere where he's going to be the number one week in, week out, but he's gone somewhere where he's going to be an
arguably
alternative.
more competition.
He's
with
an alternative
better
to Harry Kane, and he's an alternative to Luis Diaz off that left-hand side. Jackson will start some games, but he's basically swapped being a squad player at Chelsea to being a squad player at Bayern Munich. Now,
But
whether he thinks there's more options at Bayern or not, I don't know.
He's probably a notch above at Chelsea in terms of where he's viewed in the team, because like the manager knows him and knows what to expect from him.
Yeah.
And has actually given him, enough games that he's scored him goals. And in moments, Jackson's been more reliable than what his other options have been as strikers in the squad. But they haven't exactly been great sort of tests for Jackson in terms of the squad depth. He was always guaranteed to be starting, wasn't he, with Mark Guiu in the squad? And I feel like as soon as, if you go into a top club, I think Jackson didn't like the fact that he was challenged in terms of they might bring in someone else to see if you can compete with them,
you've got to
like the rest of the squad.
You've got to expect that. Like a big club, there's going to be competition. If he didn't expect that, then I've got no sympathy for him on that front.
Was he the only player in the squad last season that didn't have a level of competition in the squad compared to everyone else? Because I think
there was none. There was no competition. Absolutely zero competition in that centre forward position. There was none. So
because they obviously, Charlie, do you think right that they obviously viewed Jackson as say Jackson's just a number in the squad? They probably viewed it that they needed a striker. I don't know if they did actually, and this is probably where you're right from that point a minute ago. They probably viewed Jackson as not needed as a number in the squad, or they viewed Jackson as a player to sort of leave.
They viewed him as disposable, basically.
Yeah, and did they view? Okay, maybe as a person they viewed him as disposable, but do you think they viewed the extra striker spot as disposable, and they always knew they were going to bring Omega in, or do you think they didn't realise until Delap got injured?
Mate, do you know what? Do you know what it? For me, I think it's the latter, because they would have been more if Delap wasn't injured. They would have carried on,
yeah.
and so it goes to show that they were light, because one injury and we went into panic mode, and so they've obviously realised too late. But I would have thought that it makes sense you're losing Nicholas Jackson, you bring a replacement in. Like,
not only were you losing Jackson, by the way, you were losing Mark Guiu and Nkunku all within like a very short time frame.
So Mark Guiu had gone on loan, right? You'd lost Nkunku, you'd lost Felix, you'd lost Madueke or whatever. Those have kind of been replaced, right?
Yeah.
But you lose Nicholas Jackson, and there's a hole in the squad in that attack which hasn't been filled. You can argue it whatever way you want, it's not been filled, and there's no way that when you suffer one injury in a position and you're down to bare bones and you're a little bit fucked, that's good squad building or that's good squad planning. It simply isn't. And you look at the Omega
when we've had that over the last 2 seasons as well. It's been a repeat.
And then look at Omega, right? Obviously, someone they've kept an eye on. What I don't understand is, if you're selling Jackson, Jackson wanted out. There was conversation about Jackson wanting out back at the Club World Cup. You knew he was going, like as far back as June, July.
It was probably the red cards, wasn't it?
I think it's probably the red cards that kind of maybe swayed people's minds a little bit. But you knew he was going back then. If Amiga's the guy that's going to come in, then why have you not bought him in this season? Why have you then suddenly announced a pre-agreement in September? If you knew, you could have got him in for this season. I mean, look, whether Amiga's how he's going to play next season, I've got absolutely no idea. But I mean, moving away from Jackson, mate, what are you thinking of Mark Guiu? Because obviously last season, he obviously missed the second half of the season, most of it through injury. But in that first half of the season, the guy played 3 Premier League games and he played about 15 or 20 minutes in them. I'm not sold on him. I'm not convinced on him. There might be a player there. But for the role that we're going to need him to perform until Delap's back, that's a massive ask for someone that isn't really up to the standard right now, in my view.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it almost doubles down and proves your point even more. I think they probably acted in desperation, didn't they? They probably realised their mistake almost instantly. I just think Mark Guiu is a player who is incredibly raw. Barcelona obviously didn't mind sending him. It's not like he moved for a big fee. They probably didn't view that much promise in him. And I think he's also the type of player that probably doesn't thrive at Barcelona. But, do I feel better seeing Mark Guiu start up front in against Lincoln, probably where he gets his first?
Well, mate, he can't play. He can't play in that game. He's cup tied.
Of course he can't. So, wow. It's it's abysmal squad planning in this area. It really is. It's really poor. I think they've obviously gone, oh my gosh, didn't think that would get injured. How did we not predict that? I personally think when it comes to squad building, by the way, and this isn't just Chelsea, these squads are built without injuries in mind across the board, by the way. We've seen Arsenal for the last 3 seasons have injuries that have affected their title challenge because they didn't believe that players would get injured who have had repeat injuries. All right, Delap hasn't, but players at Chelsea playing as many games as they've had to play have been getting injured. Injuries have been, they were better last season under Maresca than they were under Poch, but injuries have been an issue when it comes to squads playing a lot of games, and Chelsea have barely had a break, by the way. So we've got it tough. And when you're looking at it and you Mark Guiu's your option, I don't think there's an out-and-out goal scorer there. I think you can see players his age doing better in and around Europe. So is it that he's just young and it's going to take time? Probably not. I don't think he'll ever be like a top striker. Does he provide competition? Minimal. So I don't really know. I think it was just out of pure desperation. I actually think a loan move was everything he needed. But do they view it better that he gets some minutes at Chelsea than, minutes at Sunderland, for example?
I'll be honest, mate. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. Because he wasn't even the mad thing is he wasn't even in the squad for the Brentford
was he ill or
no? Maresca said afterwards that it was his choice. He didn't put him in the squad, and I just look at that and I think I'm not advocating that. Oh my God, Mark Guiu must be in the squad, but he got no number 9s on the bench, and you leave a number 9 out of the squad for no reason. That's a bit odd. So you would expect him to get more opportunities this season, given the injury to Liam Delap. But then what happens to Mark Guiu when Delap comes back? Because Guiu's not one of these players who can play left or play 10 or play on the right. He's not one of them versatile forwards that you could see him having a role in the squad. So I wonder whether Guiu's been recalled, Delap gets fit again. I wonder if they might send Guiu back out on loan in January.
Yeah, is he?
Oh, but then can you play for more than 2 clubs in one season? Maybe you can't.
I honestly, I don't know. And with it's such, it all happened so quickly, didn't it? With like him being recalled and then obviously cup tied as well. It would have honestly made more sense to go and buy a new striker. It honestly would have.
Yeah, no, of course it would.
Sign a Mega and just say, look, Strasbourg, we know, we'll take the heat. I know they're getting a lot of heat over there, Blue Code, but take the heat, sign him, bring him in. He's in the squad, and do that deadline day, make it happen. But it obviously didn't, or, find another move for someone else somewhere because ultimately this player, if going forward, the player because at that point, they didn't even know how long Delap was going to be out for. So they haven't even thought that he'd be cup tied going forwards as his only real minutes. So they've just gone, bring him back. We've made a mistake. We can't bring anyone in. We've spent our budget probably because we spent an extra 50 million on Gittens that we probably didn't need to spend. Because a £50 million striker to replace Jackson, I think we'd all be sitting there. We wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd feel a lot more comfortable.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
When he was coming in. So yeah, Mark Guiu ultimately isn't good enough. Probably is going to have limited minutes. You make a really good point there. The fact that he's cup tied seems even more crazy when you sort of look at where his available minutes might be. We're literally looking at him probably getting a few minutes in the Premier League. He's an option in training, isn't he? I think that's the thing as well, is in training when they're setting up and they're doing their drills going into fixtures, they're going to need an out-and-out striker to work with, and I think he becomes that player, doesn't he? It's a lot of money for a player that's only used for training, but like you say, I think we'll see him eventually appear on the bench, and I think he'll probably be third choice behind Pedro and George whilst Delap's out injured, because Maresca seems to favour George more. I don't think I've seen enough from. Look, I know there's comments saying that he scored goals in the Conference League, but the Conference League's a different kettle of fish, to be honest.
We're asking for a totally different level.
We're playing Bayern Munich
here.
now, and we're talking about, is this Chelsea team good enough to cement a solid challenge in the Premier League title race? Because I think we've looked at other teams now, and we've won the Club World Cup. Ultimately, this Chelsea side should be being built. I don't think it's going to, by the way, and if it does, I'll be over the moon. But we should be trying to compete with the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City. There's no doubt about it, with the money spent, the ability in the squad now. Because I look at our midfield and think it can compete with most midfields. I look at some of our attacking options and think they're some of the best players in the league. And I really do think that we should be really trying to establish ourselves as one of the, guaranteed top 3 teams in the Premier League this season.
Yeah.
And put up a good fight in the Champions League against some of Europe's biggest and best teams, like we did against PSG at the Club World Cup. Can you do that with either Mark Guiu or Tyreek George as a potential option if you've got to rotate for big games in the Premier League?
You can't. You look at Arsenal, right? Okay, Gyökeres, whatever you think of Havertz as an option. Gyökeres, Havertz, Jesus as 3 number 9 options. You look at Liverpool, Isak, Ekitike, and then Gakpo could play centre forward.
Played yesterday.
So you're looking at, you've got 3-4 options in centre forward there.
And they also moved on Nunes and obviously
sold Nunes
from the squad.
and then they moved on someone else. Harvey Elliott obviously moved on as well.
But they obviously viewed it and went, right, well, we've lost a couple of players there. We do need to bring in some. So not only did they go and bring in, like Ekitike, who you might compare to Delap,
for example. Ekitike.
Yeah. They then went and doubled down on it and said, do you know what? As much as we've paid 80, 90 million for Ekitike, we need another level of quality as well to make sure we can compete on all fronts. Let's go and break the club transfer record in the Premier League.
But that's that's the window you're meant to have when you're on top. Yeah. You need to go out and strengthen again, because otherwise other teams will, and the gap's going to close. But I mean, we're back in the Champions League this week, mate. By the way, guys, keep smashing the likes. There's plenty of you in it, but we're on shit likes. So people, if you've not smashed the like button, make sure you smash the like button. It's free. It takes seconds. Run it up, guys. It's a poor effort so far. So make sure we are improving that. So please do smash the like button, people, and subscribe if you're new round here. Chelsea back in the Champions League. It's a big week. Obviously, it's Bayern Munich away on Wednesday even, sorry. What do you think this team can do in the Champions League, mate? Because I look at us and we have been for the longest time possible. We're a cup team. We seem to thrive in knockout football, in tournament football. I'm not saying we're going to win the Champions League, but how do you see this team doing there? Because we've shown we can compete with the best in a one-off game. We've shown we can beat PSG. We've shown that we can compete with top sides. How do you see us adapting this squad to the Champions League? A lot of these players will be playing in the Champions League, well, some for the first time and others very limited experience. How do you see this squad adapting to this competition?
Yeah, I think it'll be a bit hit and miss. I think we obviously did well in Europe last year with the Conference League. We probably did as expected, I think, on the most part. But I think the way we sort of applied ourselves to that competition and dealt with some of the opponents, we did it incredibly professionally. It can be easy to go to those sort of games and not apply yourself because you're thinking it's Thursday nights, it's Conference League football. But I actually saw a group of players that were hungry enough to go make sure they had to win that competition and show that they want to play at another level in Europe that isn't that. And I think they then went to the Club World Cup and proved it against some pretty good teams. And I think the PSG final shocked the world in a sense and quite literally as well. I don't think anyone expected us to outplay PSG like we did and to be a little bit of a shock tactically, I think, for a manager like Enrique. I don't think, even though it's sort of all on the table, I think Maresca ultimately got the better of him. And I haven't said that all the time about Maresca, but I think in that game, we were a bit of a new commodity to PSG. And I think it was a little bit of a shock to what they've probably played against other top teams. And, other teams in Europe, I don't think too many teams, as we know, set up like Maresca's Chelsea. I think it's quite a unique system. Felipe Luis probably paid Maresca the highest compliment and said how much time he had to apply himself to watching and learning what Maresca might do. And ultimately that proved to pay off for him, but probably the other coaches didn't do the same, right? So if you go into the Champions League and that's the sort of the level and of time and dedication it's going to take to break down what Maresca might do tactically with this Chelsea squad, I think you give yourself a really good chance against some of these teams. I think we could probably have a target on our head being the Club World Cup winners now. I think that probably puts a little bit more of a level rather than going into that competition as complete dark horses. But I'd expect Chelsea to be, pretty solid throughout the league in the Champions League, and then probably, why can't we be looking at quarterfinals, and sort of seeing what we can
agree,
do,
mate. I agree. I think you could be looking at I think quarterfinals has got to be the minimum aim. You look at look, 24 teams out of 32 do qualify. Ideally, though, you don't really want to be in that playoff round because you could end up getting a very good team. Like last season in that playoff round, there was PSG, Man City, and Real Madrid were all in that playoff round. So you are taking a bit of an unnecessary risk, and it's
Would you be disappointed if we were in that playoff round?
Slightly, because it's two extra games, and you could get knocked out if you get a ridiculous team, because it wouldn't be unheard of for big teams to be in there. So yeah, I would be, because I just want us to get through. It's two extra games that you could do without. But yeah, you look at the 8 games we've got. We've got Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Napoli. We've got the champions of Italy, Spain, and Germany. Obviously, we've got games against Paphos and Karabag and whatnot.
But I like that, though, because that gives us that sort of Conference League opportunity of rotation. Players like Marky, players like George, they can have some minutes. We know we can rest players there, but then there's some proper Champions League fixtures, isn't there, that these players are gonna want to play in, and the club should be playing in.
Yeah, we've got Benfica, Ajax,
who by the way have all been instrumental in terms of us winning Champions Leagues before, and big performances have been needed. I think back to obviously Benfica, obviously in that
in 2012, mate, we played Benfica, we played Napoli, and we played Bayern Munich as well, and we played Barcelona. So there's four teams.
Did we play Ajax in 21 as well?
Because we drew against them 4-4, and that's when Ziyech was like unreal for Ajax. And
do you know what, Charlie? We're going to win the Champions League. We've played all these teams before.
You know what though? Like, we've got more chance of winning the Champions League than we do the Premier League.
Oh,
like,
100%.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but like, not ridiculous. But we have got a better chance of winning the Champions League than the Premier League. But
I think that statement is even more true off the back of winning the Club World Cup. I think everyone would agree. I think they would say, you know what, Chelsea cup competitions, no matter where that club is at, with everything going on in the background, whatever, you just can't write the club off. We just are notorious for winning trophies.
Yeah, no, we are. I mean, you look at the Bayern Munich game, right, on Wednesday. It's a big one. It's a tough one to kick things off. Obviously, you want to start with not losing, because you've only got a finite amount of games to put things right and to get the points on the board that you need to qualify. You don't want to put yourself under pressure in those later games where you want to rotate, but actually you need the points to get through. How do you see this one? And I guess Maresca will just kind of revert to type and stick the strongest team out.
Yeah, I think that's probably why he rotated against Brentford a little bit, isn't it? I think he probably wanted to give. Maybe it was always the plan that these guys would get 45 minutes, but maybe he always sort of had the back of his mind, Bayern Munich, we need to start off strong. And I would think the message from the board is probably quite strong regarding the Champions League. And I think they understand now, with the power of beating PSG, how like marketable it makes the club if you're performing in the Champions League against the biggest and best teams. Like, the hype goes to another level. So yeah, players like Cole Palmer, players like Reece James. Reece, I'd expect Reece to be playing, but I'm not sure. I feel like there's a real limit on minutes for Reece James. So maybe Gusto. But yeah, I would think we'd see most of our best players starting. They're going to want to. They've earned the right to by winning the Club World Cup. The players deserve to be playing against Bayern Munich in the opening game, and it's obviously a historic opponent for us. So we've got to go big, and we've got to go and try and win that game, and sort of put a stamp on our Champions League campaign this season. I'm really excited for it. I think Bayern are going to be a really big test for us. I don't know if they're going to be as big a test as what PSG were, but I think it's going to be tough. I think they're a different outfit.
They are, but Bayern are a very good side. But what I would say is, mate, they'll give us a lot. They'll give us space. They won't sit. They won't sit back. They're at home. They're attack. They will leave spaces in behind.
Yeah,
they will
commit. The Vincent Company side, isn't it? At the end of the day,
they'll commit. They'll commit men forward. We've spoken a lot about the attack. Would you expect it to be Palmer in the 10, Pedro up front, Garnacho left, Neto right? Do you think that's our strongest front four right now?
Yeah, probably. I wonder if Esteval might nick Garnacho on that.
And you still stick Neto on the left.
Yeah. I think I was really impressed with what I've seen from Esteval so far. I think Garnacho probably, it's early days, isn't it? But why not? If Esteval's not 100%, then why not Garnacho? Because he's obviously probably a level above. I think you're pretty much right. I think it just probably depends on whether or not Esteval is good to go in that sense, because I think he's probably done a little bit more to earn.
Well, he's been ill, hasn't he? I don't know how he's going to be.
That's it, right? So we don't know. If he's not 100%, then yeah, why not? But I wouldn't expect to be seeing Gittens, to be honest with you. And I really would be disappointed to see either, a Mark Guiu or a Tyreek George sort of start. That would be concerning.
That can't be happening. Surely not. No. I mean, one thing we've not spoken about is the defence. Now, obviously, Levi Colwill, massive miss. We know that. I think, again, evident against Brentford, where our build-up play at the back is really suffering. There's no doubt about it. What do you make of the defence? Obviously, Maresca made it very clear he wanted another centre-back. We didn't bring another centre-back in. We're going to be making do with the options that we've got. We've seen Tosin exposed twice in 2 games in terms of his 1v1 defending, leaving a lot to be desired. We've been caught in the transition twice. Jordan Henderson, 1 ball over the top, and the same against Fulham. Obviously, it was ruled out, but we were still caught out at the end of the day. How are you feeling about the centre-back situation? Because for me, it's a concern, and it's one where, again, you're another injury away. You're an injury away from Tosin or Chalobah from being a shambles at the back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was evident as well. We spoke about this last season. We
tried to sign Dean Huijsen as well, even when Colwill was fit. And then we lose Colwill, and you decide you don't need a centre-back. It was weird.
It doesn't make much sense to me. And I look at teams like Arsenal, literally across the town, and they've gone and signed Mosquera. They've gone and signed Hinchape, and they've doubled down on their defence when it was already as good as what it was. And they added Calafiori to it last season. I think, what have we done in that time? We probably haven't done enough to even do half the level of business of what they've done. And it's concerning because I think there's good players in the defence, but I really do think it's been an issue. And then we've sort of doubled down on it and said players like Disasi, no chance. Did he play Champions League football last season for Villa?
Yeah, he did.
Play Champions League football. Like, I'm not saying Disasi's the be-all and end-all, by the way, but we've doubled down on it, saying you're not part of this squad. Exactly what we did with Chalobah last season. You're not part of this squad. Then all of a sudden, we're needing a centre-back. We probably don't have it. I'm not saying he's good enough, by the way, but, are they deeming we've got the right amount of defenders? Because I personally look at it and say we don't. With an injury, we're in trouble waters again. So numbers-wise, I don't think we've got the right amount. So you've banished Disasi, but numbers-wise, we could probably do with another centre-back in the team. I'm not saying he's good enough, but I can't understand why you deem a number not useful rather than... Do you see the point I'm making? Yeah. Right? I'm not saying he's good enough, but I'm saying they obviously don't think we even need the number to warrant... Because if you're paying the player and you've got the player there and he's been part of the squad and he's got experience... Is it not better off having him? We made the same point about them letting Chalobah go last season, and they called him back in January and said, look, we're really sorry, Trev, but we need you now. So then they called him back. So I think we're going to be in a similar position to what we were last season. And if any injuries occur, then either they'll sign another centre back in January, or they'll go to Zassi and say, look, you're back in the squad. We need you again, because we've not probably done enough when it comes to defensive recruitment.
I just look at it, right? I love Chalobah, right? I think he's great.
Yeah.
But we're being brutally honest here. You're probably not going to win a Premier League with Trevor Chalobah as your main starting centre-back. Can be a very useful option in the squad, can play a decent amount of games and do a very good job for you. Tosin, squad player.
Yeah.
Shield, squad player, in my opinion. Fofana is arguably our best centre-back, but he's never fit, and you don't really know what level this guy is actually going to get to. What do you think our best pairing is this season? Because Fofana's obviously rusty, he's not been fit. He obviously played 45 minutes, but he played at right back. Do you see Fofana, surely, because Maresca has spoken about how much he likes Fofana and Colwell. Fofana was starting games at the start of last season, and he was looking really good. If he's up to speed again, surely Fofana is starting at centre-back. And do you not think he has to be?
Oh, maybe, but I'll be honest, right? I believe in what you're saying as true on paper, but with Fofana, I've just not seen him get to the level that he's had so many injuries. I don't know what the best Fofana looks like anymore. I don't know how often you can see that. To be honest with you, when you asked me that question, the first thing I thought was our best two is probably Chalobah, Colwell. But I think that probably is our best two, because I know what I'm getting with Trevor. Whereas with Fofana, I know how good he could be, but what's the point if he only plays one? It was the same conversation we were having about Reece James. What's the point if he plays one game in 10 and he's world class? What about the other 9? It just is uncertainty again. So as much as Fofana probably is that, how often is he going to be available? And this is the point, right, Charlie, where I agree. They probably map out the squad on paper and say, look, for a fit Fofana is an £80 million centre-back and he's world class, right? And he plays every game if he's fit and available. I agree with that if he can get back to the level, but he's had a lot of injuries. We don't know where he's at in terms of his dedication to the club either, by the way. There was all that stuff with Instagram, and there's been rumours about him leaving. But I think, and then you look at someone like Trevor Chalobah, who is 100% dedicated to Chelsea, ultimately committed, gives his all every single game. Yeah, okay, look, he's not the best centre-back in the world, but I know what I'm getting with Trevor Chalobah, and I think I know what I'm getting with Levi Colwell, and I think ultimately we're seeing how much we're actually missing him now.
Yeah.
And I think actually that's really important to make that point, because I think a lot of people, even towards the end of last season, were
a lot of criticism,
giving him a lot of stick. And I think we're now seeing how much he grew into that role, how important he became. And I think last season was hugely important defensively as well. I think he really did start to mature and was starting to make those sort of John Terry-esque blocks and interceptions that I think he really sort of took leadership and ownership of that back line. And I think maybe the sort of variety of players he played with probably helped him to do that, because he was pretty much, bar a little injury, was pretty much the one consistent, wasn't he, that whole season? Levi was the nailed on player, right? But I'm not sure. I think I can 100% agree with you with Fofana being the nailed on centre back if fit and available, and that can happen. But I don't know where he's at injury wise. I feel it's almost like Lavia, isn't it? We know how good these players can be.
But this comes back to the squad planning, as you mentioned. When you're going into a season and you're basing your squad and your business on players staying fit, who have shown they can't stay fit, you're taking a massive gamble. I look at the centre back pool in general, right? I honestly think next summer we're going to be in a similar overhaul as we saw in the attack this summer just gone, because you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to take a decision on Fofana next summer in terms of, can he stay? If he doesn't really stay fit this season, you've got to take a decision on him.
I think one more injury is done.
I would say that this has got to be, if he misses again large parts of this season. This is his 4th season now.
Yeah,
I think you have to draw a line in the sand and accept that this has just not worked out.
He missed the whole season, didn't he?
He missed it with an ACL. You then got Badia Shil, who, barring the first 6 months at the football club, hasn't really shown anything. You've got a decision. You've got a decision to make there. What do you do with Tosin? A decision to make there as well.
I think Tosin is the sort of player that you could have in the squad
Agreed.
And just around.
Yeah.
And, be good rotation.
Yeah.
In the same sense, I'd probably think of Trevor, but I don't think you can have. I don't view Badashile in the same light.
No, but then you've also got Mamadou Sarr and Anselmino both on loan.
And to offload Dizassi as well.
Yeah, and where do Anselmino and Sarr fit into the equation at centre back? Because I honestly, mate, next summer we are going to have to go and sign a starting quality centre back. I really think we're going to have to go and do that.
And obviously Josh as well.
But mate, what's happened to him? He's disappeared off the face of the earth.
Actually, we did a show, didn't we, months ago now, when it was around the contract talk, and he obviously didn't get into the Conference League squad that night and things like that. But they almost proved it that he'd sign his contract and then minutes would disappear. And this is what I think people need to remember and Liverpool have almost done this with Ekitike as a real recent example. They don't say anything to these players. They sell them the dream. Once the contract's signed, they can do as they please. Ekitike probably felt that he was going to go to Liverpool, be their number one option, guaranteed minutes. Probably didn't think at any point that they would actually go and then sign Isak on top. So he probably signed the contract with complete, a little bit like James Trafford at Man City. Probably,
he must be fuming.
Exactly. Like the wall is fully pulled over these players' eyes, but the clubs don't care because now they've got the option of both, and ultimately it's in the players' best interest to perform if asked upon. And I think that's what people need to remember, right? Is that we're talking about the Nicholas Jackson situation. Ultimately, Chelsea should have been doing the same. They should have been telling Jackson the whole time, you're our number one, blah, blah, blah. Signed the lap. Jackson stays at the squad. We don't have the issue in terms of who's going to be playing up front. They fight it out. Yeah. The same defensively as well, by the way. Don't pull out of the deal or have the one deal, like you said, with Dean Huijsen, and then don't go to anyone else. Like, go and sign the players, make the deals happen, and tell these players they're going to play. And then ultimately, they have to deal with it when other players are in. But like we said, they'll play Josh, they'll give him minutes, they'll sign the contract, and then it's done, isn't it? They won't have to give him minutes.
Mate, he's just disappeared off the face of the earth. He's not even making squads. And like when you're Josh Achimpong and you're looking at it, Fofana starting at right back and you're not even making the squad, you're sort of thinking, well, where are my minutes? Because the minutes are not coming in the Champions League because there's no Conference League anymore. They're not coming there. Yeah. League Cup. I think he plays Gusto at right back in the League Cup. I'll be real. At Lincoln away, he probably plays Gusto. Or you might get Achimpong at centre back in that game potentially. He might play in that game, but I don't see him featuring in Champions League unless.
But then if you're Josh, you're looking at it thinking, right, I've played. He could get to the end of the season, like you say, he's played in a couple of those games, and he might have played against Paphos in the Champions League.
Yeah. It's useless. That what good is that for him? This is the point, though, mate. Like, once you've signed that contract, that's kind of that.
Yeah. It is,
I think we've got to be honest, right? Whatever we think of Josh and however highest potential and however good he is, the reality is, given the depth that's at right back with James and with Gusto, he's not getting in there. Okay, he just isn't. And
ultimately, you're right. Yeah, if he was a left-footed player, he'd probably be playing games.
If he was a left-footed centre back, he'd be playing. Yeah. I think. And then you look at centre back, and there's no real in there either.
Does Hato get a chance?
What, a centre back?
Yeah.
Maybe, but again, he's going to play left back, and then if they invert from the right, he'll just slot in as a left-sided centre back in the three. I'd be very surprised if we saw Hato starting in the defensive two. I don't see that as a situation, but I don't know. You just look at the defense in general, and it's just like, I don't know. It just sort of looks very average.
Yeah, I'd agree. I almost feel like they might have got away. The defence of the goalkeeper, I almost feel like have got away with a lot.
The third best defence last season in the league, though, and then you sort of think like, well, then the defence clearly isn't that average. But when you look at the quality, I'm not involving fullbacks here, by the way. I'm purely talking on centre backs. So I think in the fullback areas we're very good, but at centre back, I just look at it. Other than Colwell, there's no standout centre half.
Yeah, is it okay? So then, does it become the sort of thing that when we first signed a couple of these players and they cost a lot of money, but they weren't standout, but they've eventually sort of become standout? Is it that sort of case that you let this defense marinate and eventually, like again, we're looking at a really solid defense because Levi really does sort of become the player we all thought he'd be. Tosin is a great sort of steady option, and then obviously someone like Chalobah thrives and keeps improving. And then you look at it and go, actually, and Fofana, when he's fit and available, he's used. It's okay. It's not Liverpool's, is it? It's not Arsenal's. I don't know where it is other than that, but is it okay? Is it acceptable? Do they get the job done and do they work in the system? But I agree with you. There's no standout defensively, and I think that is concerning and worrying because we've always had probably one or two fullbacks wise there is. And I think when you look at the best teams and the teams that have gone on to win titles, 9 times out of 10 they've had everything, but some of the final ingredients have either been the goal scorer or an addition of a centre back or a goalkeeper that are probably to the next level. I think we've seen City obviously do that before with Haaland, even though they were winning leagues. We also saw Liverpool do it with Alisson, with Van Dijk. They added those two into the mix, took them to the next level. I look at this Chelsea side and think they're in a similar position to that Liverpool side, that you add in obviously a Van Dijk is a stretch because they're not available every single year, but you go and add in a top keeper and you go and add in, I got a lot of stick in the summer for saying about Donnarumma, but I think it would have been ideal. I really do. The fact he's gone Man City actually doubles down because Man City viewed him as good enough and were willing to pay his wages. But I think that would have been perfect because as much as he might not have fitted our wage structure, I think you can make an exception for a goalkeeper that's going to be in goal for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
I would agree on that. But you're right, though, mate. You look at our centre-back pairing and you compare it to the teams we're trying to be competing with in terms of getting ourselves up there. Mate, our centre-back pairings right now, let's be honest, it's not title-winning quality. And I don't think it's even that close to being title-winning quality. You need a Colwell and someone else. Now, Fofana could have been that guy, but I think the jury's out on him. You don't really know what level he's going to get back to. You don't really know what you're going to see from him going forward. But the issue we've got, though, is what top quality centre-backs are out there that you can go and get that fit the mould? Like, there's no sort of like world-class centre-back that stands out that would be available. I'm not talking about a Saliba or a Gabriel. You're obviously not going to go and get them. You're not going to go and get yourself a Van Dijk. Where are the top quality centre-backs right now in world football that are available to get? And there's not that many of them. And so we're in a position where we need that. I don't know what the plan is for a Sarr or an Anselmino or whatever, but we need someone. I mean, we should have signed Mark Guehi in the summer, but we didn't.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I'm not saying that he's like the world-class centre-back and he's going to fix everything. He makes Chelsea much better defensively, whatever people think of the player. I don't know. I just think we're at a crossroads defensively. Fullbacks, we're fine. Goalkeeper, we need to sort it out. And centre-back, we're at a crossroads. I you just go into Champions League and you just sort of think, if you're coming up against a Barcelona attack or a Bayern Munich attack and it's Chalobah and Tosin at the back and it's just like...
Yeah, they're coming up against, the likes of Kane or they're going to
and Miles and Lewandowski's. And I'm just like, if you really want to go far in these tournaments and win these big matches, it's not good enough at the end of the day. I think we have to be brutally honest.
Tournament ultimately, I think one, they've got, they're looking at it going, we're third best. We've got the third best defense in the Premier League. Yeah, that means it's okay. It means they view that it's okay. Whereas I think we are sort of looking at another level, sort of going a little bit deeper there, going, is it, have we got a little bit fortunate that it was the third best in the league? Does it mean the other defenses are even worse? Because I personally would have said last season that Bournemouth had a better defensive partnership than what we did in terms of...
Oh, yeah, with what was Barney and Huijsen. Yeah, that was a better part. Yeah.
So, and I think probably Spurs, and look where they finished in the league, probably had a better group of defenders. Maybe even Manchester United have a couple of better options as well, by the way. But that might be a bit of a stretch, but I do really like Lenny Yora. I think he's a top player for his age. But either way, I think they probably got away with it because by viewing the base statistics and sort of saying, oh, they're third best in the league, we're doing okay, they can then probably not go and sign a player. But when they go to the Champions League, and like you say, it's a different level. I don't think there are players and attackers in the Premier League of the same level as some of the teams we're going to play.
Oh,
Like how many?
not. Yeah.
Okay, there's Haaland, there's an Isak, but like, you know, then we're going to go and play Bayern Munich's attack, which is formidable with Harry Kane. We're going to go and play Barcelona. They're going to be real tests, and they might sort of show up the individual players and their lacks rather than a unit that actually become the third best. You might see individual moments, like you said about Tosin the other day, made a mistake, got caught out. We got caught out, obviously, against Brentford with that, you know, that pass, which is unbelievable by Henderson. And Schade is obviously the last person you want running in behind with the pace that he has. But there'll be moments like that throughout the Champions League against even better players than what Brentford have to offer. And I think they will highlight that there are individual levels that aren't being hit in this squad. And we'll have to do something about it. But maybe they need the proof to go out and act, and they haven't quite had that yet.
Yeah,
because we got away with winning the. You know, we played against PSG's formidable attack, and you know,
we locked them up.
Clean sheet.
Yeah, we did. Like on its day, the defense is good enough on its day. Like we've shown that, but ultimately, over 38 games, that defense is not going to win you. It's not going to get you close.
That's the difference, right? Is that exactly what you say there? Is it becomes about a defense that can put together real consistency. And to win a league, by the way, I think you can get away with having your days and having an attack that can outscore the other team's attack in cup competitions, which I think we've been able to do.
Yeah.
But in the Premier League, right, you look at yesterday for Liverpool as an example, they won it in the 95th minute with a penalty, but because their defense was so good and consistently over the last sort of few games for Liverpool, their defense has kept them in games when their attack hasn't been doing enough. And then their attack has gone on to win the game late on, or they've had a magic moment or something like that. Because their defense was so good, then their attackers, sort of bailed them out. But I don't view our defense as being good enough to keep us in games. There could be a mistake. There could be a moment where we concede. And I think you're right that over 38 games, it probably isn't good enough. And I think that's where the issue creeps in if you want to do more in terms of winning a title or a league, because it's over a stretch of games where it's...
If we're happy, we're not happy, by the way, but if they're happy being a top 4, top 5 club, just a Champions League club, then this defence will probably get you that.
In the summer, right, you get what you're saying with like the complete and utter reversal of players, and we lose 4 or 5 defenders and bring in another. Like, who are you having stay?
I think you keep Chalobah, and you keep Chalobah, and you keep Colwell, and maybe you keep Tosin.
Right.
I honestly think next summer, Badiashile and Fofana. Well, 2 of these 3 are gone, in my opinion. Badiashile, Fofana, and Tosin. I think 2 of those 3 are gone next summer.
Well, Tosin's pure profit, isn't he?
Exactly.
That's the worrying thing, actually, with our defence, is they probably are looking at every... If you actually sat down and had a real conversation, do you think they view every single player? All right, maybe not Levi, but I bet they'd be tempted if an offer come in. And I think the same with Reece as well, is that if a serious offer's put on the table and we need that finance, like who knows what sanction we get hit with, by the way. If it's a huge bill, they might suddenly start to look at these players that are pure profit again and think, right, we've done it before. Could we do it again? Put huge monetary value on the book?
I would go as far as saying, other than Levi Colwell, I think all the current centre-backs are for sale next summer in terms of the ones that are here right now. I think Tosin, Badiashile, Fofana, and Chalobah, they would all be available next summer, in my opinion. I think all 4 of them are. And that's kind of mad. Out of those 4, I could easily see 2 or 3 of those 4 leaving next summer.
I'd agree with you. I don't think it's even contested, because even like Chalobah, and as much as he's come back into the mix and they've given him a second chance, I still don't view him as like absolutely untouchable. And I think they view him as sellable if the right offer comes to the table. If Mark Gehi leaves Palace, surely they are looking at Chalobah and thinking, right, we go and make that deal happen, because we know what he's about, and it got cut short.
But I mean, there's 3 or 4 centre backs that could easily leave next summer. look, Sarr and Anselmino might plug the gap of one position, but I think Chelsea are looking at having to go and sign at least 2 centre-backs next summer.
Yeah, they'll have to do...
Which is tough.
But they might be able to... The only thing is with a World Cup is like it brings like another level of attention, doesn't it? And players that perform in the big moments. And obviously after a whole season, like this point last season, none of us probably would have sat here and said, oh, you could go and sign Zabani from Bournemouth. He's a great player. Like it would have been a real sort of rogue statement. But then after a season of decent level of consistency, it looks like a better signing. But that's probably what happens, isn't it? Over the next season, they probably start to really identify targets like they probably did this season with Pedro, Delap, Gittens. They were names that were being thrown up, even Garnacho, from January till the end of the season, pretty much. I mean, we were talking about Delap saying, I don't want to sort of blow our own balloon up a little bit and really give us praise, but I think we would sort of put in... And you know what? The proof is there, right? And I don't know when the conversations were happening at Chelsea, but me and you were having discussions about Delap long before I heard anything from anyone else. We were saying, if you line up the perfect signing for this sort of ownership and the direction it's heading, it's Delap. And I don't know if conversations had even started then, but we might have started the train there, Charlie.
Oh, mate, you never know. But we were mentioning it, and it was an obvious textbook Chelsea signing. You could clearly see a relegation release clause, a player, like that was obvious. So, I don't know, mate. You do look at it, and there's obviously a lot of interesting business that's going to be done. This squad is good, but there's still some holes in it. And I think we're set for a fascinating season. I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't know how well we're going to do, but I don't think it's going to be boring. I think there's going to be some real highs. There will be some big lows as well, by the way, this season. People need to prepare themselves for the fact that we are going to lose games this season.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to lose games that we shouldn't lose, but we will. And there will be some poor performances along the way, and there'll be difficult runs and whatnot. But I do think we're more than capable of finishing in the top 3 of the Premier League. And I think we're capable of winning a cup. We're capable of doing well in the Champions League. But my sort of overriding sort of closing thought would be, despite being more experienced and despite adding quality to the team, there's still a lot of unknowns about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think ultimately, like we touched on right at the top of the show, is that by adding new players in who are unknown and sort of repeating the process again with players coming in, can they be good enough? Are they good enough straight away? When do they get to the level that we deem good enough for the squad? Yeah. When does the experience kick in? We had these conversations, 2-3 seasons ago. Some of those have now been answered. I think it's the same process, isn't it? It's just going to keep repeating because the board have got that real approach of you can be experienced no matter how many games you've played and at what age, really. It's just what sort of games you've played in. And I'm not sure I fully agree with that. And I do really think that a couple of top additions that have, been schooled and around the block and have been, in all different types of scenarios would be really useful and beneficial for this team. I think we've seen players like Thiago Silva be so essential for some of these young players' development. I look at Levi Colwell, I don't know if he'd be on the same trajectory had he not played with a player like that.
I think I agree.
Yeah, you add those players in, you reap the rewards. You've got to do it with the right players because, you can go and get a Raheem Sterling and then it kind of goes the other way.
Shit,
yeah, exactly. So you've got to get the right professionals in and you've got to get top pros in. But there's a reason, and it's a model that we've obviously copied on a little bit of a different scale, but there's a reason a team like Brighton have Lewis Dunks and James Milners and Brentford have a Jordan Henderson in the dressing room because they understand the value of those type of players, and Sunderland have gone and got a Xhaka because these players have been around and they know what they can add to the team. And I think those sort of players would be important to add in. And I think that then removes the doubt that you've got, that closing thought that you've said, that doubt gets removed with those type of players, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, mate. And it's just, as we said at the top, it's just constantly a case of, oh yeah, but next season it might be all right. Next season it'll be fine. There'll be more experience. There'll be this, there'll be that or whatever. But it just constantly feels like the now is overlooked too
Do you know
much.
what, Charlie, as well? Yeah, I think that is perfect.
I'm not saying it's overlooked completely, but it's
No.
overlooked too much.
I think because this, and I think the frustrating thing with that is that we look at how good the now currently is, and I think as fans we can see that it's tiny adjustments where there's been erratic spending everywhere else. That if you just focused on it just a tiny bit more than what you currently do,
Yeah,
you probably would have success, like almost not immediately. But this is a club that is a club that wins, and I think we know that it really wouldn't take much, considering, you know, when we've seen 50 million on João Felix, 50 million on Gittens. Give me and you 100 million to go and revamp the defence. We probably have a defence ready there that I don't think the fan base would have as many question marks with as what Whit, Stanley and Stewart have done with 100 million, to be honest with you. So I just think that's the factor, isn't it? Is that we've done a lot of we've put a lot of scrutiny on, you know, quite minimal things like a third choice striker and injury hit defenders being included in the squad plan and things like that. And we have scrutinized it, but we understand how important that can be in a 38 game season when it comes to having to rotate the team against Brentford off the back of an international break, because, you know, you haven't made that signing, but you spent 50 million on a player that probably is going to be sat on the bench for the majority of the season, or blah, blah, blah. That's where I think we get a little bit of stick and people say, what are you doing? You're overreacting. You're 4 games in. Don't panic. But actually, if we had have addressed those situations and those issues, and they were as heavily scrutinized as what we've sat down and done now, these discussions probably wouldn't need to happen. And we may be looking at a team that are good enough, because I believe that the best built teams are this heavily scrutinized when it comes to squad planning. I believe they have been.
No, they absolutely are. Look, I think it's fair, and I think it's absolutely, you know, a fair approach and a fair conversation to have, is that despite the good investment, despite the money that's been put into the club and the amount of players you've bought in, there's still gaps in the squad, and that just shouldn't be happening. That have
been there for too many. You know, like Thiago Silva left a couple of seasons ago now.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same gaps we're talking about.
Wasn't it? He was 40 years old for the whole time he was at the club.
But we've been talking about the same gaps really for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
We don't have a top. We need a top goalkeeper. We need another top quality centre back, and we're short we're short up front. It's the same. It's the same 3 areas of the pitch which haven't been addressed. You can look at all the other good work, and that some of that deserves credit, absolutely. But we still sit here window after window, and we're short in the same 3 areas, which are the arguably three most important areas on the pitch. And that for me is just, I don't know, it's frustrating, and it feels like we're almost capping our potential. But let's wait and see what we can do this season. But we're gonna round this one out now, guys. Big up to everyone that's locked in. Dan, thank you so much for your time, mate. It's always a pleasure to catch up. Let them know where to check you out and stuff.
Yeah, absolute pleasure being back. Good to see the chat throwing some stuff in there as well. So good to see you guys as well. At BDB Down on all the socials. I'll be on other channels and here and there. So yeah, I'll see you all around. But pleasure being on, Charlie. I think a really good chat that was needed, to be honest with you.
Mate, absolutely. We'll try and run it more regularly through the season if we can. We'll see if we can sort something out for sure. But yeah, guys, big up. Make sure you check out Dan's stuff. It's tagged in the title of the channel. Go and show him some love. Smash the likes on the way out. Subscribe if you're new around here. I'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Up the Chelsea, and we're out.